only the desperate buy from startups. And that may be kind of controversial, but put another way, it's pain that someone has to burn so much that they're willing to take the risk of buying from an entity that may be gone tomorrow.
100%.
A category that may be gone tomorrow,
100%.
right? A system that may not live on in any meaningful way, especially if they have an open source. And even if they do, that's not a guarantee that it'll be able to meet the needs of that company. So that problem has to be the focus. What problem are you solving that someone is willing to exchange money for? Because even though there's risk that it won't deliver, they're willing to take the chance on you.
Welcome back to another episode of Discovering Disruptions in Tech. I'm your host, Howard Holton, and I'm here with Brandon from Forward Networks. Hello, Brandon.
Hi.
Why don't you introduce yourself to the people out watching?
Hi, I'm Brandon Heller, CTO and co-founder at Forward Networks.
Fantastic. So we're here at Hacker Summer Camp, right? Black Hat DEF CON this week in 109-degree Vegas heat.
I thought it cooled down. I saw 107 today.
Oh, that's true. It is properly chilly.
Yeah. It's a little much for this, but it's very cozy here. It's very comfortable. The air conditioning is...
Oh, the air conditioning in Vegas is amazing. So the beautiful thing about our industry is kind of passion carries us forward. So Brandon, what are you passionate about? What are you excited about? What are you seeing that gives you hope?
So unfortunately, 2 weeks ago, I had to miss out on the birthday cake for Forward Networks. We were celebrating a 12th birthday as a company. And I know since COVID, time has really flown, but when I look back, time is really flying. And I'm still excited to hear the customer stories, whether they're the grand thing like automating all application deployment, or whether they're a whole bunch of little things that together add up to a lot of excitement for a lot of people, like automating a bunch of workflows that previously just didn't have the right people around code, didn't have the right data, didn't have a path forward. And especially around agentic AI atop our data platform, we're really excited about that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about AI, right? AI is the great democratizer. Again, when we talk about AI, we're specifically talking about LLMs and generative AI within the context of my statement. I don't want people to think that, I somehow think AI is brand new. But the beautiful part about it, and what makes it the system for democratization, is the fact that it understands intent better than any system that came before.
Yeah, I'm kind of two minds here. One of them is, and my head of security feels this way strongly on LinkedIn too. Shout out to Mike. This is just automation by a different name. That's one way to say it. That's kind of the AI pessimist view. And in one sense, a lot of what AI is doing today, especially with agentic, it could have been done before, in the sense that the data was present. And if you had the right people coding for long enough, then they might have, if they focused, achieved the outcome.
There is no outcome that you get from AI today that with the right amount of effort you couldn't have got before.
But the pragmatism is the change, and that's why I'm excited.
Yeah.
That you don't have to have that team of coders, or at least that one really good person who could go away tomorrow and then you'd be stuck maintaining that, but at least would have the skills to combine your data to fit your workflow at your company for your needs. There's just this whole set of bespoke kind of things that don't make sense for one vendor to do because they're not going to be applicable to all the customers. But if you have this way to connect the data, and this is what, for the listeners, right? Agentic AI is about systems that can pull data from multiple sources, that can try to achieve a goal that isn't just asking a question and getting an answer, and that can increasingly interface with the real world. Would you agree? Is that part of it? They're trying to achieve a goal along with more data?
I have a real problem with agentic AI.
Okay, let's hear it.
And the problem is, it was developed as a methodology to reduce the amount of hallucination by having AI check itself and refine its output, which isn't what most of it gets used for. If we use agentic AI to improve the output and have AI check itself and grade itself before returning a result, I'm with you 100%. Otherwise, I don't know what the hell it is. It's not that it doesn't have value. I'm just tired of the fungibility of language. I'm tired of, we describe a thing, we read research on it, the research has a defined purpose, people don't really read the research, they read the headline, marketing gets a hold of it, and all of a sudden everything is now that thing.
Language is dense, it's imperfect, but it's really useful for a lot of things we need to do. And I'm 100% with you that we have to trust whatever the system wants to do. We can't have it break things faster. And it can break a lot of things faster. We need appropriate guardrails for AI. And so my favorite thing at Black Hat and other conferences is find the little startup corner, because you're going to see the diversity of business models flourishing. You're going to see the things that in 3 years, we're not going to see the same number of companies there, not just the nature of startups, but because we don't really know where the value is, but we know what the potential is. And so some of those startups are kind of in this direction.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm seeing some really interesting startups at Black Hat. I saw none at RSA, to be honest. I saw a lot of kind of the same thing. I still see a lot of the same thing here at Black Hat, but I talked to two today that had me pretty excited. My constant frustration with the Startup Corner really just has to do with maturity, not anything else. Because the Startup Corner is all about potential, not about actual. It's all about aspiration, not about today. Right? Because they're new. They don't have the ability to start day one with an expansive platform that answers all of the questions. Instead, what they have is the tip of the spear and in hopefully a really good thesis.
Yeah, they need to have a vision that's going to captivate those early design partners and investors, but at the same time, they got to figure out what's going to pay the bills if they prove that it's real. What's going to prove out the market? What's the thing someone's actually going to choose to pay for?
Yeah, I'm waiting for someone to be visionary, though. That's the problem that I have. There's an awful lot of engineers that become founders, and that's great. Anytime anyone can become a founder and find that independence, it's
no
absolutely
offense
fantastic.
taken.
No, I don't. There's no offense at all intended. But here's the problem: engineers don't control budget, right? CISOs control budget within cybersecurity. CIOs control budget within cybersecurity. And so my constant question to every really tech leader is, how are you providing value to me, not the business, to me? Because if you can provide value to me, then you make me care about it, then I break out my wallet. And a lot of times I look at what these guys are doing and I'm like, you're totally missing the point. You need me as a CISO to care about you because you're a startup. Because I can't look at your 10K. I can't look at your shareholder reports. I can't look at financial analysis. I can't look at a 12-year roadmap and have confidence that you'll be here tomorrow. I have to have faith in your vision, and when your vision doesn't speak to me at all, it becomes really, really hard for me to care enough to take that risk.
Here's how it was posed to me once in a really succinct way. Only the desperate buy from startups. And that may be kind of controversial, but put another way, it's pain that someone has to burn so much that they're willing to take the risk of buying from an entity that may be gone tomorrow.
100%.
A category that may be gone tomorrow,
100%.
right? A system that may not live on in any meaningful way, especially if they have an open source. And even if they do, that's not a guarantee that it'll be able to meet the needs of that company. And so that problem has to be the focus. What problem are you solving that someone is willing to exchange money for? Because even though there's risk that it won't deliver, they're willing to take the chance on you.
100%. You have to overcome that risk so that someone will take the chance on three guys in a garage.
So I came from more of an academic side. This is technology that escaped out of a Stanford lab with a bunch of us that happened to graduate at the same time. And those early lessons were very much in this direction of the newness of the technology, the sophistication of what's below is actually against what people want to hear and want to learn about, right? They want something that's going to solve a problem quickly, and anything that's new often represents risk to them. They want, another way to call it is, they want disruptive capabilities without organizational disruption. They want it all,
right?
And they want it now. They don't want to take it. They don't want to accept any risk for that. So we had to find people who could not solve the problem anyway, other than the technology that we had proved out enough to where they would take the risk on it, who also happen to have budget owners closely associated with those who would implement it and sign off. And enterprise sales is like a long path where 10 people have to say yes and one person can say no. And the bigger the company, the more people in that chain, the more procurement gets involved and has their say, legal gets involved and has their say, the CISO signs off on the network product because they want to make sure that the company behind the scenes is doing all the right things. That you just have all those gates. And as a startup, I know how naive some of the early founders are, and I kind of wish I could go back and, I wish I knew then what I know now, because I think it would have led to some different decisions. But often the big sexy technology outcome is really not what someone wants. They want to solve their problem right now, and it may be the least sexy problem, but the thing that's the most pain. It may be something like compliance. It may be that they just don't know what they have, right? The inventory is incomplete and they don't fully trust it. And that leads to all kinds of problems down the line with automation, with getting past the auditors every year, and just it burns on them.
Yep.
And so if you can find those problems, I mean, this is a podcast about advice for entrepreneurs, but I think it's fairly natural here. Right? Find the problem that's so burning that someone's willing to take the risk on you. And when I go to that startup corner, I like asking those, founders when you come across them, do they even know what that is? Have they come across it? Because a year or two in, and a lot of these AI startups, they're 2022, 2023 startups that were created when this technology became possible to kind of build upon it. They don't know quite yet, or they have hypotheses, but they haven't fully validated that.
And a lot of them, again, I just go back to, wait, human beings can only have a singular perspective. It is whatever your perspective is. And so the most valuable thing you can do, especially, I really wish salespeople would take this to heart. The most valuable thing you can do is do your damnedest to learn the perspective of your buyer. Startup founders need this more than anybody because you live and die on it. The faster you can get revenue, the more confidence you get from VCs, the more likely you are to get the next round of funding. And as a founder, that's the job more than anything, right? Your CEO's job is to constantly be fundraising.
And those early engineers have to find a way to do what they have not been trained to do at all,
Correct.
which is tap into emotional pain, right? What is the pain that's causing someone to even consider you, let alone proceed with the risk that it may entail?
Yeah. And if the pain is big enough for an engineer, so every engineer experiences it, then it's probably big enough for a VP. Might not be big enough for the CIO.
Probably
big enough to the VP.
They're aware that they could get some efficiency gains,
Right.
or they can make their workforce happier, improve retention, like the soft stuff.
Yeah. And so then you have the 2020 issue, right? 20% better, 20% cheaper. So, okay, all 2020 can get me to buy. You really have to, like, if to stop me, if to knock me off balance a little bit, 2020, okay. The ones that are really good, though, are those that change my worldview, right? Or expose that they don't necessarily change it, but they give me the ability to acknowledge that my worldview is wrong because I know it's wrong, and tell me how to fix it. You know what I mean? Because you have to do both. You can't just do one. You can't just say, hey, Howard, everything you do is wrong. Cool. I'm actually aware that everything I do is wrong. But no one has thus far showed me a better way. But if you go, Howard, everything you do is wrong, and here's the better way, oh, now I'm listening.
So I have some stories in that.
Yeah.
There's the big scale and there's the small scale, and they can both be equally motivating towards a purchase and towards deployment of a technology. So one is, just very quickly for the audience, what does Ford do? Because it's relevant here, right? We create a digital twin of your network. It's an accurate software copy. Think Google Maps meets Google Search, where we've grabbed all the data, all the config in the state from the switches, the routers, the load balancers, the firewalls, and the clouds. And then all the software-defined stuff at the edge, whether it's NSX or SD-WAN, all the software stuff that sees packets. So we grab data from everything that sees a packet, we build this mathematical model, and on top of that, you can ask questions. And it's just like Google Maps, right? Before you get to your destination, say, I want to go here, show me the path, tell me the traffic, and Google Maps will say, oh, did you know the restaurant's going to be closed, or it's going to be closing very soon once you get there? Are you sure you want to do that? So there's context on the endpoints, there's context on the paths, and there's an understanding of the world that's very succinctly communicated, because all I did is say, from here to there, how do I go?
For the record, I think it's the second best use of virtual twins I've seen. Maybe third. So the first best, by far, is pharmacology.
Okay.
Right.
Testing virtual drugs without
Yes.
the cost of
Yes.
affecting people.
Well, not just without the cost, but without the time. Time is the biggest challenge, right? So the COVID vaccine is the most tested vaccine we've ever had in history, even though we tested on fewer humans, because they were able to take all of the data every night and run millions of simulations to produce a protein chain that they could build in the lab, test in the lab, feed the data back in, and then do that over and over and over and over again.
Was this Moderna with mRNA stuff?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay, I
this
didn't know
was-
that they were doing that in the
this was
background. I knew
the
it was
best.
like weirdly quick that they got something out there.
That's how they
like
did it.
weeks, but it's amazing.
They did virtual twinning. The second best, arguably, is on the manufacturing floor. The problem with the manufacturing floor is you can't make any money at it. I spent a ton of time consulting in manufacturing, working in manufacturing. No one that I know of has ever actually been profitable doing virtual twinning on the manufacturing floor. It's infinitely complex. They're running at razor thin margins. Blah 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 blah. What I liked about your idea is it's a really smart way to go about handling the churn and change. You have 500 features that I want added, but that has more to do with the fact that you open Pandora's box than anything else. Anyhow, back to telling stories about customers.
We did. We opened the Pandora's box of data about your network. So the very short version is we make data accessible, authoritative data about the network for everyone who interacts with digital infrastructure anyway. And originally we thought it was really network data is for network people, right? They need to do their jobs, of course. But we realized pretty quickly that actually security users were there, cloud users were there, tools teams, printer teams need to know where the printers are. What's this IP address? Where does it live? Is it still there? Does it have a vulnerability? There's data about the network and the endpoints that are kind of on the edge that's of use to everyone in a company who interacts with IT or digital infrastructure in some way. And so around 5 years ago, we started expanding to give specific views for cloud problems, right? How does traffic go within a hybrid cloud? We have to speak the language of cloud operators that see kind of diagrams rather than network people who see nodes and links. They see the world differently. Same thing with security, right? So they don't care about paths to the same degree, but they care about connectivity, they care about hosts, they care about reachability. Can you show zones and reachability in a way that people don't need to be burdened with the details? And so those are just a few examples of kind of things upon a data platform. But the example I wanted to show is, so many years ago, Goldman Sachs came to us with a challenge. And they said, we want to automate all of our application deployments across our global infrastructure because every app they deploy has to be up all the time. It has to run on multiple continents at a minimum. And the bigger the application, the more flows they had to place in their network. And what they wanted to do was have a box that would be fast enough to where they could ask it, a digital twin, that they could ask questions of and say, well, I want to connect these two subnets. I know where they are, but what's the path that they should use? Because then the role of their firewalls becomes very simple. It kind of turns paths on and off with a simple port. It means they can switch out those, so they have vendor independence. It means they don't have to pay for the proprietary vendor stuff that would manage their firewalls. It's beautifully declarative to start. It looks just like Kubernetes, if you're familiar, right? You declare the resources you want, the connectivity you want, and the kind of parameters on those resources, big or small, tags. And then the system does the rest. It's magical. You've declared what you need, and then the system has made it so, kind of like with clouds and Terraform. And so they were able to do that on top of physical machines and virtual machines and increasingly containers, all the stuff they've got across their globe. But the challenge to the automation, the long pole in the tent, was the network side, because they couldn't automate it. And so they had
no one visualizes the network that way. And we've done a really good job of automating all of these other tools. But if we're being honest, the network has been both the rockstar and redheaded stepchild of IT for, I don't know, 15, 20 years, somewhere kind of in there.
It hasn't seen the automation that other areas have.
But right? It's just freaking worked. And it's ridiculously complex. Like those two things go hand in hand, right? So it works, but it has a level of fragility because there's so many layered configurations that have a ripple effect that we're also hesitant to mess with it. Right?
Yeah, you don't know what the effect of a change is going to be. You don't know what traffic is going through there. And you don't, in many cases, even know if that is the one thing you need to do.
Right. So, but you know it works today. You know your application's acceptable and accessible, and you know that performance is okay, and you know your ports are all at a reasonable utilization.
Change control, the application connection to infrastructure, these are great uses of a network digital twin. But for the GS example, just to close it off real quick, like they wanted to automate, and they knew what they wanted because they had already done an early version of this. They had built their own. It was one of these engineer Python projects that was great. It was a way to debug what was going on. It was a way to change firewall rules more quickly, but it wasn't really designed for automation, which is a very different way of building a product. Right? You really have to think about how algorithms scale, and you have to make them reliable, so they have to be in individual pieces, and you need a usable UI that persists beyond the one or two people who started that system. And I think there's a lesson here for startup founders where if you can find customers that have a problem that they know they have, and they know that the method of sustaining what they've got is not going to scale as they grow. It's not going to do 10,000 flows because something like the Apple Card came in and they want to do the 30 minutes or less or your money back kind of pizza delivery for all automation with the entire chain. That it's not going to happen unless they really devote resources to it. And no matter how big a company is, they don't have enough resources to achieve their goals. No one gets extra budget and just sits around ever. There's always a level of load that means there's more that you would want to do, but you can't quite do it. And the moment that a vendor makes that the thing they do, it becomes very compelling to try that out, because then those people are not optimized for, in our case, the task of building a network digital twin, within Goldman Sachs network team. They can be repurposed to a higher level. And this is part of why I think I'm really excited about AI and how I think it's going to change how people interact with their networks and the data in their networks, because it provides that path for more people to get the thing that they want in the end with the data that is already, spread around, but it's not in a form that's clean and that's usable. And so the challenges we have about using network data for AI are it needs to be clean and accessible. That's what a digital twin can help with. And then second, you were mentioning this, we need to have appropriate guardrails when we want to go ahead and make changes. We're not quite there yet. Right? Proposing changes and then making sure before you change them, that's going to happen in the way that you expect. We're not quite there yet. But the data in that digital twin provides an amazing way to shepherd the change process now. And I think in the future, help evaluate the risk of those changes or make sure that they're correct the first time. And then the moment that you can start proposing lots of changes and very cheaply testing them, I think that's when the value of a digital twin really pops, right? Because then,
I agree.
Then the level of the people rises, right? It's supervising, it's reviewing, it's making sure those are the right things, but it's a lot of the drudge work is just gone.
Yeah, I have I have PTSD from change review boards.
They take too long. They don't deliver an outcome, and no one's happy in the end.
No one could. They're a piece of bureaucracy that doesn't function in any proper way. They all have a great intention, but no one goes into it with the forms completely filled out, with full transparency, full honesty. You're like, this is another thing I have to do. I'm going to take the shortest path, and I'm going to use the data from prior events to know what's the most likely to get approved and phrase accordingly. Anyhow, I want to go back to something that you talked about, because I think there's a really important thing there, right? I don't think most people understand how the corner office works, how the C-suite works. Almost every decision we make is build, borrow, or buy. Build it myself, borrow some other talent, or buy a pre-built solution. Those are the three options that I have. And it doesn't matter if we're talking M&A, right? I want to grow my business. I can buy another company that complements mine, and now we've added their revenue to my revenue. My revenue has now grown. I can borrow some other talent. Partner relationships are a fine one. Or I can organically build additional business. But we do that in technology as well. And you hit on it there. And I think it's really important for people to understand, right? There is nothing, given the time and money, that I cannot build myself. There is not one vendor, tool, system, solution, whatever. I'm not trying to get into the nuance of that argument. Just bear with me for a second. That I can't build myself. I could build a network virtual twin in theory if I wanted to. It would take me an infinite amount of time and an infinite amount of resources. It doesn't really matter. But looking at it, I would immediately go, even if it occurred to me to do it, I would immediately go, well, that's going to take me forever. I don't have forever, and it's going to take me a lot of money, and I don't have that money. So then I'm left with the two options. Can I borrow it? Well, no. Can I buy it? Turns out I can't. And that's something that startup founders really need to look at. When they're looking at a solution, not only does this answer the question, but is this something that my customer can buy or borrow or build? And if they can already build it, am I compelling enough to change their mind? Because the other thing I look at is it actually my job? Is it the job of my business to build the thing? Even if those two things are equal, right? Well, I don't do virtual twins.
Is that the thing in the world that your people
So why would I invest in that anyways? If I can buy it anyhow, and the commodity cost of it is even the same as building it myself, and sure, I have more control here, but now I'm also maintaining a product and taking on all of that weight, which means in the future there will be one more thing I cannot do.
Yeah, I think people tend to fundamentally underestimate how long things will take.
Yeah.
They tend to forget that in that next year where they think they can get things built, they tend to assume that other things aren't going to pop up that are going to push that along, that are going to become the highest priority. And so there's always an opportunity cost for investing in building things yourself. There's a risk associated with, are those the right people to build it that you have now? Do you need to source those people, and how long will it take to find them? And the best ones to build things tend to be the ones that are hardest to find because they already have jobs.
And they're not necessarily the best ones to maintain things.
Absolutely. They may get excited by the creation and then, then move on to the next thing.
Building is way more fun than any other phase. Right? But again, if I build it, let's say everything goes perfect and I release it in a year. You ever built a product the first time and encountered the users were like, this does everything I ever wanted. It's perfect. Don't touch it. Of course not.
They may have said that, but been delusional and not realized the pain until the third day.
Yeah. We get super excited the first day. It's Christmas. You get to open your present.
So we created a query language to make this data exposed, because originally it was locked away in the APIs that we had and the views that we had. And something very natural is the moment you realize you're a data platform, you should give people a general interface to get that for whatever purpose they have. So we created something called Network Query Engine, and the initial version of it was effectively GraphQL. GraphQL is you provide the keys and you get the values. So it's super simple. It's like the inputs to JSON.
Yeah.
It fills in the values. It's really easy to explain in one sentence. It provides a lot of initial value, but it has a lot of real pain over time, which is you still have to write the application. Where's that application to live, and how is it going to access the data? Also, it's really inefficient because you have to transfer all the data. You can't do any kind of filtering. You can't push any logic to where the data lives. You have all kinds of issues that come with shipping all the data, and you don't even have a good way to represent it. What you really want is something more flexible, more typically SQL-like, or increasingly something more agentic-like or AI kind of. And I'm seeing this as table stakes actually in a lot of security products, that there's increasingly an assumption that if a product has data, you can get it out by asking questions. What I really like about the intermediate query approach, and a lot of companies do this as well, is that you can see the function of AI is to give you a great example, to give you a starting point. And maybe it's not perfect, but then you can iterate based on what you've learned, and it's always better. It's always better to get that functioning most of the way example and then iterate yourself with something that works than to be told, yeah, here's the documentation, or partner with us and we'll build it for you. That's just friction.
AI is really good at sentiment analysis, and it's pretty good at intuiting. But the less expertise you have, the less expert result you're going to get from the AI. And that's a bit of a problem, because if you don't know that it's wrong, now you're making assumptions based on data. It's going to do its best effort. But if you don't know that it's wrong, then you don't know how to question it. And the nice thing about getting a result back that isn't an answer, but rather a query, is now you can start looking at it. And it forces you to learn, even if you're like, I have no idea what that does. Cool. You only don't have any idea what that does the first time. Second time, you know a little bit more. Third time, you know a little bit more. Fourth time, fifth time. Pretty soon, you'll find you have a level of expertise that allows you to go, oh, I know what's wrong. I actually asked the wrong question. Now I can go back in and ask a better question. Or I know how to fix this. This is no problem.
I think there are 3 common use cases I'm seeing in pretty much all security products that I'm either evaluating or when I talk to vendor, at RSA or here at Black Hat. One of them is increasingly documentation should be searchable through AI, powered by the vendor. That's just such a natural thing. No one wants to search through it. And a lot of the enterprisey stuff we use doesn't have enough users to where Stack Overflow is going to find you a solution that 100 people have upvoted, so it pops out for you in the first Google hit.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? So it's strictly better if the documentation can be based upon, hey, here's what I'm trying to do, and then it points you there. Second one related to that is increasingly, I think we're seeing a search bar as a starting point for people to figure out where in the product to go to achieve their goal, and potentially also guiding them, clicking for them, showing them how to do that in a more reproducible way. I find when I'm using new products, that's my go-to ChatGPT usage. How do I solve this thing in this product? And it shows me how to do that. And sometimes it's based on old documentation, but at least it tends to point me to the right terminology and the right path. The third one is what we kind of just talked about. It's a system has data, and you want to pull it out for your own use cases. You want to do your own query repeatedly. You want to couple that into something else, and potentially even you want to pull that into some kind of agentic AI workflow. So the notion that every system with data should make it available for a query kind of sounds dumb when I put it like that. But I think increasingly natural language interfaces are a way that software vendors want to expose that, because for users, it helps them get to the value, and then it helps the vendors sell things more effectively, because in that limited time POC, you have 2 weeks and it tends to get pushed back to 4 as you realize what you didn't know at the beginning. But then in that limited time period where you have to show your value, where you stop and you move on to the next one, every quick win is going to motivate that extension, or it's going to motivate that yes faster. And I think for the vendors and for the customers and even for the users, you have alignment there, which isn't always the case when you have a really good front end that gets you to the data, gets you to the answers, gets you to the value that the system can provide, because users don't know what data is present, and they certainly don't know how to get access to that data in a useful way. And so if you can suggest queries, or you can give an opportunity to ask those queries and get those quick wins, then it gets them on the right path. Typically, it also means you can train more users quicker, because you don't really need to train them. You just need to tell them, here's the system and here's a credential.
Yes.
And they can just ask the
other
question.
thing that's really interesting about it is every button that you put in a UI has a discrete function. It can't have a non-discrete function. It's a button, right? And so I'm already limiting the experience that my users could have with every button. The beauty of AI is you exponentially increased the opportunity for your users to surprise you.
I would say we have 3 phases here of applications, kind of building what you're saying. The first was all the CLI stuff, where we're just happy to be able to do anything. Right? It's Christmas morning because we can do things. We have to figure out what the words are and the verbs and how to navigate all that. We don't really have an interface that helps us organize the data and it's not opinionated. It's basic, but it's much better than the alternative of data. Second phase was a designed interface, right? A GUI, whether it's a web interface or a fat client, it's a designer has a concept of what that user wants to do. They assume that they're correct. They hopefully test it quite a bit, iterate till they believe they have an interface that meets a user need. And then for each distinct user need, they build an interface, or they try to build a single interface, which has some downsides, right? The more you can do in one interface, the harder it is to know the way to do that sequence of things in that interface. But now I think we've got this third wave of UIs, starting with chat interfaces, where you start with intent. But prior to, you didn't really start with the intent of a user. So it's already potentially easier for the builder of that interface to do one of 2 things. One is to just tell you the answer for what you're trying to do. The other one is to point you in the software to the thing that you want, and potentially even build the interface dynamically based on what you do. And just imagine, right, systems that start with the intent and then map to what they can do to help you. That is something that requires a lot less training. And that's also something that I think tends to lead to a better result, because no matter how expert you are in something, you probably don't know 100% of what it can do. And even if you do know how to get to there, you probably don't want to spend all the time doing that.
For sure. It also means someone that is somewhat unique, right? Where you would never, there's of your 100,000 customers, there's 5 of them that want that feature that is so low on the totem pole of feature requests. They might be able to actually get that result without a new feature request. And that sort of stuff is beautiful when you think about it.
It's amazing. I was lucky enough. So one customer a few years ago, this is a media and entertainment company that has a lot of magic, and they care about the experience of guests, and IT matters, uptime matters, and disaster recovery, for example, matters, right? They'll shut off the park and then they'll turn it back on and make sure that everything still comes up, because hurricanes occasionally happen. And so they had integrated with Forward and didn't want shelfware. We had one champion who was really pushing things, and he did an amazing thing that I'd recommend to anyone trying software, which is, if that software has data that's of value to more than just the initial users, then invite people who may get value from that data to improve their own lives by trying to take their use cases and implement them on that platform. And you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn what the data is. You're going to learn how to represent that, the things you want to do on top of the data. And even if there's a little bit of associated code or learning the query language or working with, the sales engineers there, or the customer success reps to actually implement that a little bit later, you're going to understand what that can do for you, and you're going to deploy in your environment, and you're going to generate awareness. And so I was lucky enough to just have to show up and see what 13 different teams had done in this hack day, where the morning they came in, the requirement was have a use case that will benefit you. And at the end of the day, show it off in a session. And the top 5 out of those 13 or 14 use cases that came in would be shown to the execs. And everyone who gets to do that's going to look really good, because they're improving their efficiency at their own jobs. Also, they're getting their own time back. So they've got an aligned incentive here, which is really beautiful. And then they're making sure that the software they just bought is going to deliver its maximum value. And what I saw just blew my mind.
For sure.
But I think if 3 years ago, some of the AI query generation and AI documentation support and kind of here's where you go in the product to solve the need based on what you're trying to do, stuff had been around, then the customer success reps who helped could have done even higher level things with integration. More of the users in their, moment zero of interacting with the product could have learned more of what they'd done, and we probably would have had even more faster outcomes to success.
For sure.
Because if it's how do I see this data? Like, example being, I'm going to go to a data center and I want to leave my laptop in the trunk, and I want to use my phone and get a quick answer for what's on the other side of that link before I unplug it to double check. That's like a daily thing for those who have to go to a data center. Or I need to update this printer, but where does it live in the environment? That's all data that a digital twin can have, because it understands everything in the network and where it connects and all the paths and all the IPs.
Sure.
So these were really simple use cases, but in aggregate, you just add them up and it's a lot of value, because it's a lot of people who...
Sure.
And
so
what I found
hours a year
with that use case is the number of daily users just rose as a result. That was the step change, because the moment you have enough people understand things well enough to tell their friends and show off what they've done, it becomes, that's an expectation that we're using this data platform to get to the next level on our own automation. We're going to get that time back, or we're going to get that higher level of certainty for the same time.
Yeah. What I used to do AI consulting in a prior company, and there were a few rules to AI workshops. And they're still my rules today, right? Rule number 1, is it budgetable? Not, do you have budget for it? That's not the question. The question is, as you think through the use case, can you break it down into pieces and assign a dollar amount to each piece? I know what this would cost. I know what this would cost. I have no idea how to build a spaceship. That is no longer budgetable. We're not building a spaceship. I don't care how much money you think you could make from it, because we don't know how to build a spaceship.
So does this map to like outage time? Does this map to people time? Does
Everything.
this
We're
map
not trying to figure out an ROI at all.
No ROI.
No
just
ROI
budgetable.
at all. Just, is it budgetable? Because if it's not budgetable, then it's not possible. It's amazing how many people have a good idea, but as they break it down, they find a spot where they're like, oh, yeah, we can't do that. Thus, it is not budgetable. And budgetable can be, we can't do it, but we have a partner that can do it. We can't do it, but you, the vendor, can do it. That's fine. That's budgetable. Right? But you'd be amazed, and that is a very low bar, and you'd be amazed how many fall below it. Right? So then the next one is, does it have a discrete benefit? Can you define the benefit? Not can you quantify? Can you clearly define the benefit? That one's much easier. And then the third one, does it make a hero?
Okay. And the things that people tend to do are a mix of these, or it's all
Yeah.
about the hero stuff?
Well, no. What
do you see?
They actually don't even think about the hero. It's shocking, because the thing we face the most is exactly what you're talking about. Entirely too often, we do these things and we do it once and then it disappears. Or we come up with 50 really good use cases and we get 2 or 3 of them done and they fall off. But everything that the technology team does, we do at the resistance of our users, because we're really bad at selling ourselves, really bad at showing off what's good. If you want people to trust you, you make a user a hero. Has to be a user that's a hero, not you, the tech guy. Has to be a user that's a hero, because that person is going to tell 50 of their peers. And you know what everybody wants more than anything else? To be a hero in a place where they're never a hero. Everyone wants to be a hero.
They want the win in front of their boss. They want the win in front of their peers.
They want to go home and tell their spouse about it. They want to tell their kids. They want to tell their parents. Everybody just wants to be a hero, even just for a minute. And they will tell everyone about being a hero. And the amazing thing was, when we started talking about that, when we started thinking that way, when we started implementing that in organizations, you had a line of people that would sign up at the door. I want to be a hero too. Can you fix this for me? I
Because
think
they
I'll be a
get what's in
hero.
it for them. It's not just for general good. It's not for the company good.
Correct.
It's, I will do this because I will succeed more.
Yeah. So how do you make me a hero? If you could just answer that, so many of these sales issues would just go away. Honestly, the number of times, like, again, when I started kind of adopting that mentality, when I go in and talk to customers and I consult with customers, I don't care. I'm not concentrating on your business at all. I know the value that whatever I'm suggesting can bring to the business. I did my research, did my homework. I've done this on 1,000 times. Now what I want to know is, how can I make you a hero? Because if I make you a hero, now we're working together. Now we'll work out all the details because you're focused on it. There's something in this for me. I'm going to be a hero. This is going to be better for me. And if we just did that with everything, tech teams would be the most welcome team in an organization, and oftentimes we're the least welcome. Right? Tech sales would be the most welcome, and oftentimes it's the least welcome.
So the use cases I love the most are the ones where people's role changes within an org and ideally shifts to a little higher. So example would be, if a security team has a question about a network, they tend to ask the black box owners, which is the network team. And so a way that network teams can become the heroes is to remove themselves as the bottleneck in every freaking question. Just imagine every incident response. It's going to have some network questions, right? How did the attacker get in? Well, what was actually open? What were the exposures? Why were those open? When were they opened? Okay, where could that attacker have gone? Okay, well, now we made some changes. Is it actually secure? Have we closed down that? There's so many steps in that chain for something as simple as we saw some, error in activity here that indicates, they came in and they stopped, but we want to prevent that stuff in the future. And so if the network team can curate the data, can make sure that they've got the interfaces, so security teams, tools teams, whoever it is, cloud teams can access that data and answer questions they have without having to go through people, both sides are going to be a lot happier. And then the network team can jump in and provide the coaching based on the responses, or they can continue to focus their time on additional levels of automation. They can be the ones to do the application deployment automation. They can be the ones to automate the compliance reports
For sure.
for the CO who needs those things to show the board. Like, they can do the higher level, higher value stuff. And I feel like increasingly this is how IT people need to think, whether you're in networking, security, cloud, tools, all of the different areas of engineering and IT within tech organizations or orgs that have some actual infrastructure. It's how do you raise the level to where no matter who it is in that org, starting junior operator or experienced architect, they can still raise the level at which they operate. They can do more patch review rather than patch testing and generation. They can do more curate the data and make it accessible and make sure the interfaces are functioning for everyone who needs it, rather than being the ones to answer more questions at a higher rate. I think that way of thinking is hard because it requires people to learn new things. But if they learn those new things, they're going to get a great outcome, which is they're going to get more time back and their organizations are going to do better. And when you are able to connect the solution you've got to that, or even you can be part of that journey with them, one solution is not going to solve everything, especially if there's a change in process. I think that's where organizations really see a change in how they do business.
For sure.
And that's where the solution is even more compelling if it enables that changed way of doing business. If it removes a person from the loop on a process that they don't want to be involved in, or they want to do the final check, but they don't want to do the drudge.
Where they're not adding value, they're providing a response.
They're not adding their highest value.
Right.
Are you doing your highest value is a question I can ask my junior IT help desk engineer. I can ask my senior IT systems engineer. I can ask my head of security and compliance who's been doing this stuff for 25 years. And in all those cases, it forces you to introspect and say, have I automated what I can? Have I picked the right vendors for the right product? Am I building this thing? Should I not be building this thing? Should I be partnering with this vendor to get a faster outcome, or should I continue to do this thing myself?
Yeah, for sure. I'm constantly trying to explain to people, the only thing AI can't do is be curious. It doesn't have the ability. It can't start from nothing and create curiosity. It's fantastic. You tell it what you want. There is probably an AI for that, and if there isn't today, there will be tomorrow.
I think with enough random guesses, it might have the illusion of curiosity.
Sure,
If the thing it
sure.
comes back with looks pretty good.
But
it
humans are
yet
really
just
good
go
at
to
curiosity, right? And so what I really want people to do is think about, in your day-to-day life, how curious are you? Like, break down each task. Does that task require curiosity? No, automate it and do something that requires curiosity. If you do something that requires curiosity, you will absolutely have a future. If you do not, I'm sorry, I just don't see it. You're setting yourself up to be displaced. You're setting yourself up to be disrupted.
Yeah, something may on first glance seem like, oh, I'm going to automate myself out of a job. I don't think I've ever seen that once, because the person who does that is the most valuable employee, right? They're delivering higher value. They're the ones who are going to be better training the other people you want to do that.
You may
They're the ones who
automate
move on to the
yourself-
next problem.
You may automate yourself out of that job, but you're likely automating yourself right into a new job.
You're automating yourself into a better job, or
For
a new
sure.
job, or a higher level of job security, because you've
100%.
demonstrated those skills, and you're that rare person who took that leap or developed that skill. And
Yep.
everyone has the capacity. Everyone has the capacity to change how they think and make sure they're doing their higher value. I have to question myself and make sure I'm focusing on the right
Constantly,
things.
right?
But the people who overcome the activation energy inertia, that get their electron to higher state and try something else before the energy goes down and they emit the photon, right? Those are the people who really stand out.
Yeah, I agree. Well, this has been awesome.
Same here.
So this was another episode of Discovering Disruptions in Tech. Please like, subscribe, follow, comment, share. If you'd like to be on an episode, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Have a great day.